Okay, so one of the big reasons why I picked up the Sony A7 III was the fact that it had 1080p at 120 frames per second. Now, I've had the camera for a while now, but really hadn't got a chance to get out and test it. So the other day I decided I'm gonna finally get out and really test out this feature. And sure enough, nobody could come out and help me shoot it. It was raining, and all in all, just a terrible day to go out and shoot. But did I let that stop me? Nope.
Take it. If you won't give it to me, I'ma take it. Take it. If you won't give it to me, I'ma take it. But if they never told you that the world wasn't round, would you flip it over? You playing poker with the joker, boy, let's keep it kosher. Yeah, mama, your son finna go supernova. Keep your focus, really, I just might spaz out in this place. Got that war paint on my face. Just been running around in this race, feels like I've been running in place. Now I got hella bling, got hella rings. I'm ready now, sitting every team. Y'all slept on me, that's hella dreams. Don't take time, take everything. You trying to shut me out, it's getting blatant. Yeah, I come and see you, now no hesitation. Yeah, I'm really, really tired of being patient. Yeah, if you won't give it to me, I'ma take it. Take it. If you won't give it to me, I'ma take it.
What's good, creative fam? Brandon Washington here. And first of all, if you're brand new to the channel, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button, because this channel is all about filmmaking gear, tips, and tutorials. But like I said, in today's video, we're going to be talking about my test with the Sony A7 III shooting at 120 frames per second. Now, when shooting with this camera at 120 frames per second or any type of slow motion, there's actually different ways you can pull this off. So you can actually manually go into the settings and change your frame rate to 120 frames per second, but then you can also access their S&Q dial, which will allow you to preset a slow motion setting to your camera. This is kind of just a quick way to actually be able to access the slow motion and be able to use it. And personally, I thought it worked out pretty well, but we'll go into more details how that worked compared to the other in just a bit. Now, with this camera having two different ways of shooting 120 frames per second, I wanted to quickly break down some of the pros and cons between using each. Now, first, with manual settings. Whenever you shoot your camera at 120 frames per second by setting it up manually, there are a couple benefits you get. The first is the fact that it will still record audio, which is actually something that's really nice. As some of you guys may already know, I've been shooting on a 1DX Mark II for a little over a year now. And whenever you shoot that camera at 120 frames per second, there is no audio whatsoever. So the fact that I still get audio is a nice little bonus. The other major difference that you're going to realize is that whenever you're shooting it by manually setting up the 120 frames, is that you do get more quality. I mean, you can not only tell in the image slightly, but you can definitely tell when you start trying to color grade it that there is more range when you're shooting it by manually setting up that 120. Now, although everyone kept telling me I had to shoot it in the regular 120, I decided I wanted to test out the S&Q, and there actually are a few pros to shooting it in the S&Q mode. For one, whenever you actually shoot the video, you can actually play it back in slow motion. That's one of the biggest drawbacks to shooting it in the other way, is that whenever you try to play it back, even if you say slow motion, it's very kind of jittery and it doesn't play back well on the camera. But whenever you shoot it in S&Q, you immediately can see what that slow motion footage is going to look like. The other thing that's really nice is the fact that you can actually go into S&Q and actually set that for 120 frames. So that way, if you need to jump into shooting something in slow motion really quickly, you can easily just turn your dial over to S&Q, and it is a much faster way to set yourself up for 120 versus having to go into your menus, change it, especially if you're shooting in 4K. Now you got to switch from 4K to 1080 and then change your frame rate as well. Also, when it comes to the S&Q mode, is the fact that it does take up significantly less space on your memory card. So if you are going to be shooting a lot of slow motion footage, it may be beneficial, especially if you're starting to run out of space on your card, to start shooting in S&Q. Granted, that is one of the reasons why this falls apart a little bit faster in grading, but it is good to know that if you did need to save some space, but you still needed that slow motion footage, if you shoot in S&Q mode, it will take up less space, in fact, almost half as much space on your memory card than if you shot it the other way. But now that we've got the pros and cons out of the way with each of these two cameras, let's just literally look at the images themselves. Now, when it comes to the quality of how they look, honestly, I couldn't really tell the difference. They both look really good. I know there are pros, like I said, and cons to each, but when it comes to strictly the images themselves, when I play them back on my computer, they look very similar. Now, yes, the S&Q is a tad bit softer, but all in all, if you're throwing this in as an edit, especially if you're going to be posting this online, like on YouTube or Instagram or something like that, realistically, I don't think anybody will be able to tell the difference. All right, now when it comes to focusing with these two settings, they both do a fairly decent job. Now, neither one of them is going to allow you to keep face tracking, which is something that I do miss from the 1DX Mark II. When you are shooting with the 1DX Mark II, at least you still get face tracking, but in this situation you won't get it, so it's doing the contrast. But I did notice that they both do really well. I mean, I did a quick little shot where I was walking towards the camera with each, and in both settings I was able to keep myself in focus without actually looking at the screen or obviously pulling focus. But one thing I will say is that no matter which one of these are in, when it comes to rack focusing, this camera, the A7 III in general, doesn't do that well. When it comes to pulling focus, especially a large distance of focus, I did notice that it was kind of doing like this chopping as it moved to focus. Now, with this entire test, and I was gonna touch on this later, I shot all that footage with a Sony native lens. In fact, I actually shot it with the 85mm 1.8 lens, which is a new lens that I just got, and I'm going to be doing a whole video on that really soon. But it was completely shot with a actual Sony native lens, so that way I can get the best focusing possible. And so I just want to kind of put that out as a quick little disclaimer. So as a 1DX Mark II owner, what are my final thoughts on the 120 on the A7 III? Well, honestly, I think it is really good. I mean, this is one of the few mirrorless cameras that actually gives us 120 frames per second in 1080p, and it looks really good. I mean, everything that I've loved so much about this camera translates right over into the 120 frames per second. The fact that they give us an S&Q mode, which is just kind of a quick little way to be able to dial in to 120 frames, is nice. But as I said already, if you don't have to use that, I probably wouldn't. But it is nice that they have that in as a feature. When it comes to the focus, yeah, we lose out on face tracking, and yes, we lose on being able to rack focus cleanly. But honestly, at least in my experience with using 120 frames, whether that was on this camera or on the Canon, honestly, I've never really needed to rack focus like that, especially in slow motion, because typically you're just kind of following one thing. And because it was able to kind of track me so well, honestly, I have no doubts that it'll be able to track anything else. So if you've been looking at this camera, seeing the 120 frames per second and thinking, wow, it'd be really nice to be able to have some of that slow motion B-roll type footage that you guys have probably seen blowing up all over the internet, you know, that AKA Peter McKinnon style B-roll. Honestly, I think this camera could do a phenomenal job at capturing that type of footage for you if that's what you're looking for. And I can say that as a 1DX Mark II owner, which is a camera that we all know shoots amazing 120 frames per second, this does a very good job as well. Honestly, in most situations, I would bet you if I didn't tell you what camera shot it, you probably wouldn't be able to tell. But there you have it, guys. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you have any additional questions about this camera or how to shoot 120 frames per second, leave those comments down below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.